Hello, loveys. I have Mr. Mark Bederow with us on the screen, and he is thinking to himself, what did I sign up for? Just a little bit of Nurse Kim and Mr. Bederow together on a Saturday evening? We're getting too spoiled. How are you today, Mr. Bederow?
I'm okay. How are you?
Very good.
All right.
I was late coming into our StreamYard. You're saying to yourself, what is happening? Nothing. Kim had technical errors, which she always does. Okay. I fight technology and we know this.
Okay.
But it is a day for us to recap everything in week 7. And what a week it has been, Mr. Bederow. Am I right?
It's pretty interesting.
So interesting. And I am ready to dive right in with you to talk about all of the defense witnesses that, I mean, on different levels, knocked this out of the park and have created such an interesting and different trial in the second than it did in the first trial, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different. It's a lot of witnesses not appearing who were here the last time. Seems a lot more expert heavy, it looks like, for the defense.
Absolutely.
And I mean, on some level, I suppose, for the prosecution as well. But there's much less background and just drama, if you will, from the civilian witnesses in this case. So it's interesting. Not sure what that means for the big picture, but there's a lot less explanation about that night. There's very little focus on that night.
I agree. Now, for you, Mr. Bederow, we could go day by day, which I think would be a great breakdown for everyone, but you have done that with the lawyer, with Peter Tragos. And I know that you were on with Mike last night for the Young Jerks, and that was incredible. And I don't want to, repeat too much, but I just know for me, I had like an incredible big 3 this week, right? It was like having, for sure, in my opinion, Kelly Devers. Okay. Oh, seeing the unbelievable contrast between her and Officer Barros right after each other, the juxtaposition of those not only personalities, but also the response to questions, their ability to not be rattled by one and so rattled by the other. What was your thoughts in seeing those two specifically together right after each other, Mr. Bederow?
Well, they couldn't be more opposite, right? You had one who was dragged up, an active duty police officer who had to be dragged, clutching and screaming, whining up to the stand, had the worst demeanor you'll ever see, really, for any kind of police witness. Gave testimony that, on its face, sounded a little absurd. Seemed like she was essentially, a hostage up there, if you will, as opposed to another guy who was an on-duty active police officer, not the kind of witness you would usually see launching himself, throwing himself to be a defense witness after having been a prosecution witness the first time, and excitedly looking forward to telling everyone that the taillight was not in the condition that the state police said. So you couldn't get more opposite, obviously, than those two.
Yes, and Mr. Bederow, when she said specifically Kelly Devers, stating that Alan Jackson called her, right? And that like the last time I spoke to you was prior to the first trial. And you threatened me with perjury, with charging me with perjury, which we all know that attorneys don't charge people with, perjury. That would come from a district attorney's office. But her demeanor and her calling this a false memory really stood out to me, because even though if she was off work that day, right, on Saturday, January 29th, 2022, if she got out at 3:45 because she had to do a double, she had to stay on because the rest of the department was out, on critical staffing and because of the incident that doesn't happen in Canton often. Um, is it a possibility in your mind that maybe it happened, that she recalled seeing them in the Sallyport another day, maybe Sunday, because Brian Higgins was there and Berkey was there maybe then?
I mean, anything's possible, I suppose, as Kevin Garnett famously said after winning a championship, and Dr. Welcher said the other day in Science. But so, yeah, sure, it's possible, but you have to look at the substance of what she said. She remembered the day. It was the day of the incident. It was the day she was working dispatch. Right? She was called in to do dispatch. She drew significance from the fact that it was Berkowitz and Higgins. She drew significance particularly to Higgins because she knew he was a witness in the case. She found the time weirdly long or something like that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of detail for a so-called faulty or fake memory. After that day, the idea that Berkowitz would be creeping around the Sallyport, I think, diminishes.
Okay.
Same with Higgins. I just think, as it moves on and it becomes more a state police thing, the idea that they would be alone in the Sallyport for a wildly, weirdly, whatever the word was, long time, I think that gets less and less after. And the bottom line is this. It's what she told the FBI. With getting what lawyers call 1001 warnings, 18 USC 1001 false material statements are punishable. It's a felony in federal practice. And she didn't suggest that she was confused to them. That's what she told them. And she told them not right after, but right after the alleged incident, or shortly thereafter, she left the Canton police.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And she ends up in Boston, and her story changes when she gets called in. But might it have been a different day? She could have said that. She didn't. Okay, her story was a complete false memory. But at the time I said it, I did believe it to be true. Now, what that tells you is she had legal counsel somewhere from someone, whether it was from the Boston police herself, because, she kind of tiptoed through the minefield of false statements, perjury, and all that in a way that she makes it near impossible to do anything about it, because she's saying, I didn't materially make a false statement to the FBI at the time. My faulty brain remembered that, but I know it's not true. And I'm not testifying falsely today, from her perspective, because it didn't happen. So, she got advice from someone on how to play this. What she didn't get advice on was how to at least present as a respectable police officer and credible witness, because, her demeanor it's embarrassing, really, more than anything else. It was very unprofessional and just snivelly for the sake of being snivelly, and which in my view made her look actually very childlike, with her back and forth.
Yeah. And I actually did see a couple of things online that did compare her to the one and only Veruca Salt from the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which I saw. I could see that as well.
Wow. Maybe I'm older than you, but Veruca Salt is not from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Come on.
Oh.
Veruca Salt, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. You got to go back to the original Veruca Salt. Gene Wilder. That I know we're getting old, but I want it, Daddy, and I want it now. Yeah, there was, again, if you're going to have humor with all of this, whoever came up with the Veruca Salt comparison, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I think that was Brian. I saw it from Brian from LTL. So I give you kudos, Brian, on that one. I was like, oh, that's funny. Now, I was watching a couple, like, because TikTok again has exploded to another dimension over the Karen Reed trial. And there is a attorney that I follow who I really like. Her name is Sheila. And Sheila said, "Hey, Kel, okay, Kelly Devers, just wanted to let you know something, Sister Sledge, that you have potentially invited criticism upon yourself for the remainder of your career. I hope you enjoy maybe being at the desk, because you are not, every time you are ever called again to be a witness for anything in Boston Police Department, your memory and what you have stated or anything that you have documented will come into question. They will say, how sure are you of this? Because you were pretty sure about a memory that you had in this other case because it's so public. Do you agree or no, Mr. Bederow?"
This is a lawyer who said that?
It was.
All right. I'm not so sure that's accurate.
Oh, okay.
In terms of admissibility of, I mean, again, she claimed she had a faulty memory to the FBI. She wasn't claiming that she had a faulty memory in what she was recalling as a witness, right? She was claiming it didn't happen. That was her. I mean, I know it gets convoluted.
Yeah.
Her testimony was that it didn't happen. And previously I did. Whether that can be something that everybody can just get into in the future, I'm not so sure about that. But she still has a problem. I mean, Google is forever.
Yeah.
It's online, and that's just part of her problem. Her demeanor is worse even than the faulty memory story. Again, you're a police officer. You're supposed to be calm, cool, collected under pressure. You know, they're going to send you with a loaded firearm into terrible circumstances. And, you know, you're acting like that. It's the kind of thing where who knows? But, you know, on the other hand, she did her job from the perspective of the Boston police. She didn't go against the blue wall, which it appears put her up to this. I mean, again, we don't have any actual knowledge, but you have a little common sense. I mean, rookie cops don't get called into the police commissioner's office in a large department. I mean, that might happen in Mayberry where there's 3 cops. But
not in Boston PD, no way.
Large department, which is going to have, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming the Boston police must have at least 3,000-4,000.
Yeah.
You know, I know it's, you know, the NYPD has like 40 or 50, but it's large. And the commissioner is a busy person, and a rookie cop getting summoned to the corner office because she's testifying in a case and told, we have your back, and you just do the right thing. I mean, I don't think you have to be a genius to understand what's going on with a wink and a nod and whatnot. So, you know, it was a risky move to call her. Did it pay off? Maybe, in the sense that they're clearly not going to call Brian Higgins. So they do get it out there that at least at one point she was claiming Higgins was in the Sallyport. And you also get the name Berkowitz out there after the Canton police were supposedly recused, and you have him in the Sallyport. And remember, the jury has been told that Berkowitz, in one of the more bizarre factual presentations of this case, just happened to be driving by on a merry old Tuesday when, through his Coke bottle glasses from, not even slowing down, he, my eye spies a red piece of taillight that no one else apparently saw for the prior 2 weeks. I mean, I think that's pretty silly on its face. And if the jury's thinking about that. Now, the other interesting thing is, though, again, that's not real evidence. Her testimony is, I did not see that. I said it previously, but there's no actual evidence that she saw them in the Sallyport together. I mean, that was in essence impeaching your own witness, getting that out there. Her evidence, her testimony is it never happened. But the jury hears that they're going to do with it what they will.
Yeah. And I just did Google that really quickly, just because facts matter, journalism, and we are very smart and pretty. So the Boston Police Department has 2,144 sworn uniformed police officer personnel, 569 civilian, and 33 canines, including 2 of Chloe's brothers. I just made that up. Now, going to Officer Barros, what an incredible moment. A moment that my jaw dropped, Mr. Bederow, was him saying on that stand with the photo of the Sally Port, which I know that everyone has gone over, but you never ask a question you don't know the answer to. You get a little bit in the weeds with that. As an attorney, I know that you never know which way it really can go. And him saying, absolutely not. My jaw hit the floor. Was that moment a really impactful one for you as well?
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously that's nuclear.
Yeah.
There are very few what I would call litmus test issues in a trial like this, and he's one of them. In other words, if the jury finds him credible in the sense that they credit his testimony, then the case is over.
Yes.
Without more, because if the taillight looked as he described it and not as Buchanan did, I mean, Proctor hasn't described anything because he's a ghost in this trial, but you know what Jennifer McCabe described it the way Buchanan did. That would undermine her. Kerry Roberts, I think, as well. But the bottom line is, you can't conclude that Barros is both true, you credit what he says, and at the same time believe that the state police did not frame Karen. You both can't be true. Now, even if the jury can't resolve it and they say it's possible, then that's a great result for the defense. If it's one of those, I don't know. But if the jury is deliberating and they all agree that guy definitely told the truth and is reliable in the sense of we believe what he said as fact, then you're done. She cannot be guilty because the taillight clearly had to have been planted if you credit him.
Yeah. And now there would be some trolls on the World Wide Web, and we do know them. And they stated that Officer Barros gave too much, right? That he kind of not retracted, but he gave that his memory could have possibly been a little bit shaky to Hank Brennan. But Hank was being Hank, in my opinion. He is such a defense attorney for this prosecution. I have really not seen anything like it in all of the trials that I've watched since I was 9 years old in West Dennis at my Nana's beach house. And I question his tactics, right? When he's showing you all these different pictures, for me, Mr. Bederow, it was enlightening. You are seeing the photo from the dash cam at 8 o'clock in the morning, where you see snow is impacted on Karen Reed's Lexus taillight. Then you are seeing the video from the Ring camera at 5 in the morning when she's backing up and then leaving the driveway at One Meadows, right? And then the only picture that is not from January 29th, 2022, you're looking at it at the Sally Port that was taken on February 1st, because there was no photos taken by any police officers on January 29th, 2022. And you're putting this in front of the jury again for the second time, or more for these photos. And I'm thinking it's sinking in with them of like, wait a minute, that is a completely blown out taillight in the Sally Port, right? In the Sally Port. But when you're seeing the other images, not a blown out taillight do I see.
See, the issue is this is why you have to weave it all together in summation, and that's going to fall on one lawyer with as much time as they have to get it done, obviously. Yep. Regarding the pictures, first of all, not the Sally Port picture. That's a whole thing. I'm talking about the picture or video, however you want to call it, a combination of what was in John O'Keefe's driveway backing out, the photograph from the morning of the wellness check
Yes.
And then I guess putting the car on the tow truck.
Tow truck too. Yep.
So first of all, when Brennan is asking, like, is it in the same condition as those pictures? Obviously the answer is yes. But when he's trying to imply, well, that means it's cracked, that means nothing. Okay. And it doesn't matter what he argues the pictures show, snow or not. The jury is going to determine. So when the witness says, I agree that those pictures are fair and accurate depictions of the condition of the taillight, that means nothing. He's not arguing there. See, I see it. I don't see it. There's snow. There's not snow. The pictures are what the pictures are. The jury will determine that. Okay. The fact that he didn't see the other picture during his prior testimony, that he saw it at some other time, that was a mistake, obviously. Whatever, that's going to be the jury to determine how much that matters. The reality is he was still adamant about what he saw, what the condition was. He admitted he was wrong. He kept his demeanor the same. And then on redirect, which was very good, the analogy of you remember your birthday, but not the day of the week.
Yes.
Very effective. And he dug down. So that was all effective. The other thing is this, again, you can't look at all this evidence in a vacuum. You have to marshal it in summation with the other evidence and take what you saw yesterday from Wolf. Okay.
Yes.
There was one of the most important things he said. And, if you look at the Twitter lawyer analysis today, it's not really sinking through to people who are going to think whatever they think, no matter whatever. The diffuser. Okay. Yes. For two reasons, not just because I don't want to talk about Wolf yet, not just because all the tests they didn't have the blown out diffuser. Okay. That's a different issue. That's a problem for the prosecution in another way. But the other problem they have, and somebody's going to have to explain this, by the way, is what a diffuser is and what it does. It diffuses light. It takes light that would only, the LED or whatever it is in a corner and blows it out to fill a taillight, right?
Yeah.
And if the diffuser is broken, which Karen's was, now according to the DA, it's broken at 12:30. Right?
Right.
If the diffuser is broken at 12:30, that taillight is not going to light up.
Yeah.
It's not happening. Okay. Now I'm not the physics guy. I'm not the car guy, but this is understood. Okay. And whether you want to talk about a photograph, which is taken during the day and the lights are not on and there may be snow on it, that's another problem for the DA. How unfortunate. If Michael Proctor had taken a freaking picture and wiped the snow off, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. But the problem is, they can get as cute and clever as they want, saying, look, part of that taillight looks like it's not lit up leaving the driveway, but you're kind of burying the lead. A lot of it is, and it shouldn't be. And it clearly is when it's going on the tow truck. So that is going to corroborate Barros as well.
Yes.
All that's going to corroborate that. It's not going to corroborate what Buchanan said and what the other people said, because you have to know the function of a diffuser and what it does. The other thing with Barros is this, and this just goes, the jury probably didn't get a lot of this, but people who watch this and who watch trials and live in that county, you want to have confidence in law enforcement. You want the prosecutors to wear the white hat, be straight, tell it like it is. And the jury obviously is not aware of what happened in the first trial, other than what comes out in examination about it in the second trial. So forget the jury for this point. This is just, there's dirty stuff going on here, most likely. So Barros, I think all would agree, is a good guy. I think even the people who think that Karen Read causes cancer and world hunger and every other ill in the world would still agree with you that Barros is a good guy, but he just isn't reliable and, made a fool of himself with his memory and he's wrong, whatever. You can agree or disagree about that.
Mm-hmm.
But he filled out a report and he talked about a crack in the taillight, which is, that's not a lot of detail, but it's not really consistent with the way it appears in that famous February 1st picture. Okay.
Correct.
So that's red flag number one. All right.
Yes.
You're the prosecutor. You're investigating the case. You're getting ready for trial. You're clearly interviewing this guy. Okay. I'm talking about months before trial, 2 weeks. They called him as a witness. They're not putting him up there cold. And there is no way, 0% chance, I would suggest, that somebody who's been doing this by that point, 12 years, like Lally and these state police or whoever, when they're sitting down with Barros and they say, tell us what you saw. And he says, and they would say, what do you mean by cracked? And at some point, what's going to come out in that discussion is, give us as much detail as you can. What does it look like? Now, let's assume, by the way, that they're being honest, that they're just following the evidence to lead to the conclusion while being agnostic, rather than reaching a conclusion first and trying to jam a square peg in a round hole. Okay.
Yeah.
Assume they're being fair and honest.
Mm-hmm.
He says, well, there was a crack and, there was, a small on the side, and they're looking at each other saying, we have a picture and we're being told by Proctor and these guys that this taillight is essentially exploded.
Yes.
Spontaneously combusted. Yeah. But mostly blown out. We have a blown out diffuser. We have, 40 something pieces.
Yes.
It is virtually impossible that they would not show him the picture that Alan showed him in court. And I'm talking before the first trial.
Okay.
And if they showed him that picture, Barros would have 3 options. Okay. That does absolutely not what it looks like, which is what he testified under oath and is the true version. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Another option, not believable given how adamant he was, is I don't remember. I don't know.
Okay.
And option 3 would be absolutely not. The other way, it looks exactly like the photo, like Proctor and Buchanan said.
Okay.
If he says that, right?
Yeah.
Barros becomes, one could argue, one of the 3 most important prosecution witnesses. Yes. Bury the defense. This is an honest cop. He gets called. He shows up. He's just sitting there. He's like, wow, look at that taillight. And by the way, they told him we're towing the car, that it's a car accident. Curiosity. Let me look at the taillight. Thing's blown out. Well, how do you know that Lally ignored this if you accept that he had to know? It's just impossible that he calls him as a witness and never addressed this. So what does he do? He calls him as a witness. Why? In my view, and again, this is my opinion, I don't know that. He calls him as a prosecution witness to kind of, in a game of chicken, prevent the defense from calling him and making them believe this is a bad witness for you, because they don't know what Barros is going to say about the taillight, because none of this is disclosed to the defense about his true story, which is it didn't look like that, which would be exculpatory. That would be as Brady gets. This would blow up the whole theory of their case. So the reason you know that it's likely that Lally knew this and suppressed it is, what did he do at the first trial? He calls Barros and he does a real thin direct, when this is a witness that you could take out the club and just club the defense over the head and bury them. And when he says there was a crack in the taillight, right?
Mm-hmm.
What doesn't he do? He doesn't say, could you explain in detail? And he doesn't take out the photo and say, you mean this? And so now the defense is sitting there and they hear Barros say there's a crack in the taillight, but they don't know beyond that where this guy's going or where his head is.
Yeah.
Nobody ever asked him. So you make a choice. That's not a terrible answer if I don't know, right?
Right.
It's not consistent, really, even though it's not that detailed. So they make a decision. We're not even going to cross-examine him because it's not a terrible answer, and I don't know what he's going to say. And if I go for broke like they did this time, what if he tells me it does look like the way Proctor described it? They're screwed.
Yeah.
So you would have to believe, in order for Lally not to have suppressed that evidence before the first trial, that he is so incompetent, and I mean at a level beyond what some of you probably think, all kidding aside.
Yeah.
That he would be so incompetent that he would throw this guy up on the stand, knowing he says there's a crack in the taillight, which doesn't really match the exploded taillight, and he never follows through because he knows. And it's very similar to what he did with Kerry Roberts at the first trial. Okay? Kerry Roberts at the first trial, in theory, should have been a powerful, powerful witness about the Google search. Another huge issue that the prosecution has to establish didn't happen. Everybody knows that she testified at the state grand jury that I was next to, they were in the police car and I was standing outside with Jennifer McCabe and Karen, and I heard Karen ask her to do the Google search. She swore to that under oath. She didn't say it's hearsay. I was told. She said I overheard it. Now, Lally and the defense, in all fairness, before the first trial, they know that Kerry Roberts, when given 1,001 warnings by the FBI, runs away from that. So Lally calls her as a witness and doesn't even address the issue of Kerry Roberts overhearing the Google search, even though she theoretically would establish so much more for them, but he just leaves it alone because he knows.
Damn right well.
He knows that she testified falsely in the state grand jury on what turned out to be a very important issue. And rather than say, maybe I shouldn't be calling her as a witness, maybe I should be asking her, what the hell is this in light of what you said to the feds? I'm talking as an honest prosecutor. You'd be concerned with this. You don't just ignore it. A key witness is swearing under oath, I heard something. And then when she's given 1,001 warnings to the FBI, says, absolutely not, never happened. And rather than deal with that as a prosecutor with integrity, he just ignores it and doesn't address it in his direct examination, suggesting, I know it's bullshit. But it doesn't faze him. And then they get lucky for reasons that, don't make too much sense, probably. At this point, they don't cross-examine her. Nobody knows. That's the issue. But with Barros, how could they not have known that at any given time he would have said, if asked, it didn't look like that? And what did he say even when he was cross-examined the other day? Nobody asked me. That's true. That's 100% true. And then what happens after the first trial, and the jury does know this part, although I don't know how they'll connect this or whether this will be emphasized in summation. You need to have a crazy case that there is, someone just stole my thunder, Mary the law nerd, that there is so much wrong in a case at any given time, because one thing you never see is a police officer who was called a year ago as a prosecution witness and wasn't even cross-examined by the defense after the first trial is never contacted by the prosecutor ever again. Why is that? Why would Brennan say, I'm not even calling this guy? I don't even want to know what he has to say? Because the answer is he and Lally almost certainly, they do know, and it ain't good. That aside, what happens between the first trial and the second trial? A ton of media, a ton of attention, which Barros acknowledges, and he sees that the taillight condition is a huge, huge thing. And he's sitting there saying, oh my God, nobody ever asked me. That's not true. And what does he do? He runs to Boston almost literally to meet with them and say, I'll accept a subpoena and tell you what happened. This is a guy who is chomping at the bit to testify in this case, not because he's in the tank for the defense like they're suggesting. He wants his conscience clear.
Yeah.
That's an honest witness. And that's how they're going to have to deal with him in summation, that he never backed down. He did see the picture somewhere else. But the bottom line is they need to emphasize to the jury, why was this guy a prosecution witness? Never asked the real condition of the taillight, never spoken to by the DA, run to the defense, testify for the defense, and say, absolutely not. It didn't look like that. That's how you do it with Barros.
Yeah. Truly looking at it in that lens, Mr. Bederow, it is shocking and very, very concerning, because I have always thought of Adam Lally as just making the donuts, just showing up every day and just trying to go along to get along, and to think that there was, because there had to be, right? There's no other option in the question. Yeah.
He does make the donuts. He does go along to get along, but you have to look at the larger culture and the cesspool that certain components of that office are. And that's how they make the donuts. I don't even know if he recognizes how big a deal this is. I don't know that they have any Brady training or anything in that office. Okay. I don't know if the light ever goes on in his head about the Kerry Roberts issue where he says, you know what? I need to bring her in. I'm troubled by this, because that's how they go along to get along. As far as the Barros thing, well, I don't want to bring out bad evidence. I don't even know if the light goes on where they say, you know what? That's Brady material. He completely undermines everything Proctor and all these other guys say and nukes the entire theory of our case. I don't even know if it's deliberate in the sense that he's trying to bury it. It appears to be, but they just go along to get along and do make the donuts. And this is a larger problem with that office and that, that outpost of the state police and everything. I mean, but the bottom line is, if Barros testifies at the first trial in the manner that he testified in the second trial, which, by the way, he would not be subject to cross-examination with the gotcha about the picture, because there wouldn't be a prior transcript. But what I'm telling you is, if Barros testifies the condition of the taillight in the first trial, there is no second trial. She's getting walked out of there on 3 counts. And then you have yesterday, Barros is entirely corroborated and validated by Wolf.
Yes. And if you actually look at that, speaking of, so interesting that you put those specific names together.
March 11th. People look at it in a vacuum and they think you win or lose by one witness at a time. You don't. You have to weave
totality. Yes.
Together in summation, and you have to go back to things that happen and marshal it. And that's why I said, like, you look at someone like Barros, he's not just destroying, their case, in terms of the taillight per se. Buchanan swore under oath it looked like the picture of Proctor. If you believe Barros, Buchanan's a liar. He's not reliable, which he may not be for other reasons. Jen McCabe said it was that condition. Same thing. Kerry Roberts. I mean, these witnesses are wrecking balls. They come down the hill and they take out a lot more with them than just what they're saying.
Yes. And I recall hearing in the first trial when Kerry Roberts got up and when she put up her hand like this Mr. Bederow, and she goes, when it was cracked right here, right? And she said that there was that wire sticking out.
Yep.
And I remember going, right, that she's doing this as a finger motion of a hand motion, and this is how much is broken from the taillight. And when I tell you, I clutched my pearls and clenched away, because I thought, this is it, because that's a moment of somebody who saw it at the house, but then that kind of, I think, got lost in the sauce, and it wasn't harped upon, and she wasn't even crossed in trial one. So there was never additional follow up with Kerry Roberts, just like there wasn't for Officer Barros, because the only people who knew were the Commonwealth of what they believed, what they recounted, which was in totality, in sum and substance, 100% inconsistent with the image that we see from that Sally Port on February 1st, 2022.
And such evidence, if they're aware of it and it's in their possession, custody, or control, right? And the defense doesn't have equal access to it, and it's favorable to the defense, is Brady material. And if it's material to the outcome and it's not suppressed, it's not disclosed, then, that's basis for a reversal. Now, maybe not in this particular court, which has a very low threshold for finding suppressed evidence, and certainly whether it's material or not, as you know, from the pretrial hearing, well, not even a hearing, the pretrial motion, should have been a hearing. That's a different issue. But yeah, I mean, but do they even know? Does the light even go on? No pun intended. Does the diffuser work in their brains? I don't know. That this is Brady material, or this is favorable, this is exculpatory, and we have to turn it over. And I don't know, because these are the people, again, who, when they got the federal materials, before the first trial, saw the existence of the ARCCA people for the first time, saw the text message, the family text message chain, saw the Proctor messages, learned that Jen McCabe lied to the FBI, learned that Kerry Roberts did not, in fact, what her grand jury testimony shows, did not, in fact, hear the Google search, right?
Or the request for one to be made, yes.
Learned that Officer Dever, who fled the department, actually told the FBI that Higgins and Berkowitz were hanging out in the Sally Port. I could go on. And they get all this material, okay? And the attitude from the Norfolk DA's office was, what's for dinner? Okay? They didn't even flinch.
Where's the beef?
They went to court at the next hearing and said, there's nothing exculpatory here. And that's what you're dealing with in the North. They don't even recognize or care to recognize that when they got all of those red flags, and they almost certainly knew what Barros said, we've already been over that, to kind of huddle up and regroup and say, what are we doing here? Maybe we should at least take a deep breath, reevaluate, maybe re-interview some of these witnesses. It's a little concerning because, again, you have to go where the evidence leads you. But these people from the jump, for whatever reason, were doing Karen for this, bottom line. And you know it. You heard that from Barros too, when Proctor called him. We're coming down there. Why? To take the car. They never spoke to her. They never saw the car. They never went to the crime scene. They never recovered any taillight pieces. They never recovered any evidence. They spoke to Jen McCabe.
And said that it was involved in a homicide.
Right. So
at 2:30 in the afternoon, which I always had, in my opinion, I've always been disgusted by Proctor, the text, the providing of the information, disclosing medical conditions, trying to strong arm Irene Scortibello, all the stuff, right? I've always been disgusted. But to hear Officer Barros tell me and tell the United States of America and abroad that at 2:30, the first phone call that he received, he asked for the tow, and he said that the vehicle that he needed to be towed from the location in Dighton was involved in a homicide, uh, and in Canton, Massachusetts. Now, this is before we have any video. There is no video evidence. We've seen nothing. There's no autopsy. Officer John O'Keefe hasn't only been pronounced for what? Is, from 7:50 in the morning to before 3 o'clock. So less than 8 hours. There's been no taillight. Like you're saying, no evidence has been located or confirmed. You've spoken to 3 people, one of which is Jennifer McCabe, the second of which is her brother-in-law, the homeowner of 34 Fairview, and the third is her husband, Mr. Veneers, Matthew McCabe.
Not only that,
so, yeah,
their stories, which again, even they may have no reason on January 29th to doubt Jennifer McCabe. I mean, let's be fair to the process.
You have no reason to doubt Karen.
But, well, they hadn't spoken to Karen. That's my point.
Well,
but the point is this. There are red flags everywhere, okay? When the theory is that she probably did this in a car accident because Jennifer McCabe said, I heard this, I saw this. Not right away she didn't say that. Forget what she says, okay? The evidence is overwhelming when you look at her grand jury testimony, the statement she made to the police. Forget all that. The point is this. If you're looking at this as a trained investigator, you want to do the right thing. Cops are supposed to be, and are, real cops are, they're skeptical by nature.
Oh.
They are suspicious of everyone and everything until the evidence convinces them, to whatever degree, okay? And the first red flag that they at least should have had to say, maybe I should slow my roll based just on her, is she had to call them back because she remembered about the taillight and I hit him and all of that stuff, right? That was not what she told any cops at the scene initially. They had to call Lank back.
Yeah.
She's lying, but it means, that's kind of a strange thing to leave out the first time. If you heard that when the guy is found dead on the lawn and you're all running around saying, what could have possibly happened? And we have no idea. We have no idea other than the fact Karen was running around saying, I hit him, and had a cracked taillight and showed us. So, and
but isn't that interesting though too, Mr. Bederow, is when we're looking at this and we're hearing, right, that she calls Canton Police Department back and needs to tell them more shit. But then also she has the interview at her home with Proctor and Buchanan, and then she has to call them back after they have gone to see the body of Officer John O'Keefe at Good Samaritan Hospital. They're en route where? They're on their way to go interview Karen. They get a phone call from her per Yuri Buchanan, and now we're calling and we're getting that tow. So you're telling me that Jennifer McCabe, in a span of a couple of hours, in a night that she had gone home at nearly 2 a.m. allegedly, and it was raining men. We are Googling Hockamock Sports and other things, and then you're back up. You're at them at 6 a.m. You are en route over to Fairview Road. Yet you're forgetting things, remembering them, and you're still remembering more things that you need to report to police agencies multiple times that very day. I call bullshit.
And based on that, they call the Dighton police and say, we're taking the car. If you ever want an example of the tunnel vision and just poor investigation and all the things that the defense are saying about Proctor and Buchanan and the state police to a higher level, I suppose, that's the best example of tunnel vision. Why would you already decide you're towing the car before you ever saw it, before you really learned anything? It doesn't make any sense. And then for the life,
yeah,
we'll never understand. And as far as I know, this has never been made an issue in this case. So the time to argue this, this ship sailed 2 years ago. I will never know how in the hell, as a matter of search and seizure, Fourth Amendment law, where in the hell these guys got the legal authority to say, we are taking your car. Usually you need a search warrant signed by a judge based on probable cause to do that, or an exception to the warrant requirement, which with cars, there are exceptions, but not to just tow it away. And pray tell what the probable cause was at the time they towed the car. There was not probable cause.
Yeah.
There wasn't. They had suspicion, they could, based on what Jennifer McCabe said, they had every right to go investigate, but they end up going down there and they just take the car. They presumably do the same thing with her phone, by the way. Although they're going to argue consent, although not really. And it's stunning to me that these were never large issues in terms of motion practice, possibly suppressing evidence. There could be what you call fruit of the poisonous tree arguments, that if they found evidence on the phone or car and that led them to other evidence, if the original evidence is bad, everything that derives from it goes. It's, fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. Wong Sun is the name of the famous case from the Supreme Court in like 1904 or whatever the hell it is. These are all issues that could have been litigated. I'm not sure if they were, they weren't. I don't know what it's all about, but the larger picture, what we're talking about, everything, this is why a lot of people who watch this case and a lot of lawyers from across the country, they look, criminal lawyers particularly, who deal with DA's offices, deal with U.S. attorneys' offices on a daily basis, look at the Norfolk DA's office and just say, this place is an absolute joke if this is how they make the sausage on a high-profile case, by the way. What the hell are they doing on the lesser cases when no one's watching?
Yeah. And in it, again, when we say things of like, something is so on a large scale radically wrong here, right? You're seeing this effort and this violation, in my opinion, of Karen's Fourth Amendment rights. But we then see that on the opposite side of it, Mark, is that there is no search of even 34 Fairview, the lawn in which Officer John O'Keefe is found. So you're telling me, and there's not even a permission no one asked to search the home. Yet, as it relates to Karen's phone and her vehicle, it is seized, right? In what world does this make sense?
Well, we're getting into like somewhat more complicated Fourth Amendment stuff.
We could have asked.
That you stole my thunder. That's the point.
Sorry.
No, you need probable cause to search, okay? And to search somebody's home, there are only certain circumstances. You have a search warrant, you're doing it. End of story. Step aside. Here's the warrant. Sorry, sucks for you. That's how it works. They have what they call exigent circumstances, which can exclude a warrant requirement. You go in. That is a very high threshold.
Oh.
And I don't even think this would be an exigency, even if they're just concerned because there's a dead body on the lawn and someone came in. That's like chasing someone who just committed a crime or a kidnapping. I mean, exigent circumstances is tough. But then there's the good old-fashioned, easy, good citizenship way, consent, where you don't need probable cause. You need permission. Yeah. Now, should they have done that? Well, they should have knocked on the door for a couple of reasons. Concern. But even if they're not overly suspicious, there is a dead guy on the lawn, okay? And if they knock on the door, there's other reasons you might knock on the door. Not to search, not to seek consent to search, not to make sure everyone else in the house is okay. It's to, again, what my old boss in the Manhattan DA used to say, detective, go detect something. It's to say, we've learned that this man is a police officer who was out at the bars with all of you.
Yeah.
And they kind of came over here.
Right? Yeah.
Knock on the door. Do you know anything? Like, do you know how this guy ended up on the lawn? He had a glass. Did he come in your house?
Mm-hmm.
And look, they may very well have said yes, no, whatever. The lack of intellectual curiosity. I mean, really, now you're faulting the Canton police, by the way, not the state police. But the just complete lack of intellectual curiosity. Did anybody see anything? Did you hear anything? You know, he's not wearing a coat, which maybe that was just his habit.
It was, but
Or why would the cops know that? You know, he's got one shoe. Is, you know, did this guy come in? Is there a shoe? Whatever. And you know what? That might have been a 3-minute conversation. They all say no, but you know what else might happen? And again, I'm not suggesting they did or didn't do anything, but in a different hypothetical, the cops start asking questions, just again, not accusatory. Do you know anything? Cops can start out with no suspicion and develop suspicion.
yeah.
Okay. All of a sudden, they start getting answers that are weird. They don't pass the sniff test. This one's over here fidgeting and sweating. This one says something that doesn't really match what that one says. All of a sudden, now you're thinking, all right, you mind if we have a look around? No, you can't go. You can look here, but you can't go there. You know what? That can raise suspicion. That could lead you to send one of the cops. You know what? You need to go get a warrant. Who knows? Again, you don't have to decide the legal issue about whether they had cause or not. The real issue is they had no freaking interest in even pretending to know what happened. They had no interest in asking Karen.
No.
If she said I hit him, she said if that's what they claim. Why would you assume that's a car?
No one did. No one did. Anyone, if she had said that, it was, did I hit him with your, did you slap him? Did you punch him?
How about this? If she claims I hit him, Jennifer McCabe is telling them, you know, her taillight is knocked out and she said I hit him. And Karen is apparently has all the indicia of intoxication, bloodshot, watery eyes, unsteady on her feet, alcohol smell in her breath, disheveled clothes. You know, that's like the checklist on the police paperwork.
Yep.
These are things that any sane and marginally competent police officer would have pulled her aside and said, you know, what happened here? And if she said, oh my God, I think I hit him, my taillight was blown out or cracked, and she sounded drunk, guess what? You need to go over there and don't go away. And there's a good chance they give her an intoxilizer, you know, like a portable breath test. If that result comes up high and she's saying I hit him, there's a good chance she's getting collared right there.
Right. And yes, right. And there was, and like you said, if there was that, if there was some sort of confession of any crime, when meanwhile back at the ranch at 34 Fairview, which was not a ranch, it was a colonial, but her vehicle was never there when any police officers were present, right? She was in the car of whom? Kerry Roberts, and she is allowed to leave the scene, never detained, never questioned. And you are saying she also is taken back to the scene due to what? An acute grief response, a trauma, a Section 12, because of a comment made that, you know, she may unalive herself if Officer John O'Keefe is unalived. And it is so horrific to think of the domino effects because of, in my opinion, one person being able to be calm, cool, and collected from a 911 call on that entire day, and then another person who goes to that scene, who is the loved one of that person, who is spiraling due to the trauma that you have just seen. And it was literally one side, one woman's word against another, in my humble opinion. And it was taken from there. And then that same night, like Leanna G just said, and Canton PD never asked, because like Proctor said in the text that very night, will he catch any shit? Nope. He's a Boston cop too. There it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to say. Although I actually do have to ask, maybe I'm old-fashioned and just old or too formal. Where did this unalive and rehome, and where did all this stuff? I just can't talk like that. It's kind of like file 1.0 and 2.0.
I don't do it anymore. I don't do the 2.0 because of you. I know better.
Unalive come from, instead of saying somebody killed themselves?
Yeah, so it's monetization, or you'll get blocked, because if you say, yeah, like, you know.
Sorry.
No. Thank you for coming today.
Well, not rehomed though. Where did, that's another one.
Rehomed came from Coco, from Nicole Albert. She said when she was on the stand, they said, you got rid of your dog. She said, I did not get rid of her. I rehomed her. And then we picked it up and we rehomed everyone.
Listen, I've had dogs my whole life. Okay. Most people laugh who know me and say I like dogs better than people. It's possibly true. Not all people, but generally, no one who has a dog gets rid of a dog unless there is something. I mean,
no.
I mean beyond
anything,
because that is the last resort to anything. That you just don't do that. But whatever. We'll see if they have dog.
Well, listen, that put my red flags up about them. If you had Chloe, who is, to me, Kino, Lola, Winnie are your girls, right? Kino is my son. Okay. I mean, I literally didn't birth him, but I birthed him, and I am obsessed with him. The thought of you getting rid of a family member, okay, that you love, like that most normal people love their animals as much as they do, that it's like, okay, so you got into a couple of little tiffs, and yes, it wasn't good. Could she have done some more training? Yes, I understand. You don't want your animal biting anybody. I get that. But at the end of the day, she was your family member. And after 7 years, you gave her the boot. No, that was a red flag to me about their family, Mr. Bederow. I go, oh, no, I don't trust anybody who gets rid of their dog like that.
Well, the argument is it's a consciousness of guilt. There are hiding evidence. Now, whether that's true or not is for a jury to decide, but that's certainly the argument, is that it's a tough decision, and even they didn't want to do it, but are they concerned or not? I mean, whatever, who knows? We'll never know, but that's where rehomed came from. All right, see, that's good to know. And now I know the origin of unalive. Sorry about saying.
No, listen, you're totally fine. It just stuck with me because I had to keep saying it. And when I would cover Birchmore, I would have to say, I had to say it an awful lot. And then it just sticks with me now. So, okay, now to the next day, if you don't mind. I'm so sorry. I am enjoying this too much right now. I needed you this week, because what a week. But now to day 27, we had Lucky Loughran and Karina Kolakithis, two incredible defense witnesses. And Lucky, in my opinion, went from a strong defense witness to top 3 for me in his responses, in his strength, in his conviction, in his inability to be waived by prosecutor Hank Brennan. And no matter what dirty tactic came out, I feel like he held his ground, and he was 10 out of 10, would recommend. What are your thoughts on Lucky?
Really, really powerful, because you start with what's the bottom line point from his testimony. And the bottom line point, I'm not going to put it on a Barros level of a litmus test, but the bottom line point is, if you believe he's credible, including crediting his testimony, and you believe he drove by, And by the way, these are red herrings. You know, was your route at 2:30, 3:30? As long
Yeah.
as it's after 12:30, I don't give a shit. Okay, because the DA's theory after 12:32, whatever. Because the DA's theory has to be that John O'Keefe is lying there at 12:30. Okay,
Yes.
so and if you believe his testimony and that he's testifying honestly, that he's driving and, you know, of course, a truck called Franken truck, because of course, and he's lighting up the whole neighborhood and it's whatever. Good job with pictures this time. They didn't do that last time. That was a nice.
Yes.
And he says that I'm quite clear that there was no dead body on the lawn because I would have known that, even if you give him a pass for not recognizing the dumpster, whatever. The point is this, that's powerful because
Huge.
that undermines the whole premise of the DA's case. So then you look at his demeanor and credibility, and it was stunningly good. I mean, he was good the first time, but the point is he gave a master class in how to be credible in terms of being calm, respectful, no matter who's asking the questions. And if you simply saw a transcript and you didn't know who was asking the questions and you didn't hear it and you just had no reason to know, and all you did was watch his response and demeanor, I don't think you would know whether he was on direct or cross. He was that even keeled, even when he was being confronted. I don't want to get too in depth with.
Yeah, no.
Well, not
understood.
My point is, you know, he was being needled about being intimidated, which, you know, as I said somewhere else, I think that was a stunt to influence potential jurors on another case about witness intimidation, but we'll put that aside. I don't think that had anything to do with Karen Reed or Lucky. That had to do with someone else, but we'll leave that alone. You know, showing him pictures, trying to suggest that he was somehow schnookered into testifying favorably. And it really didn't make a hell of a lot of sense, because what he said is, a couple days after this incident, I spoke to a defense investigator and I said, no body on the lawn. And I know these people, but I work for the brother of the homeowner. So
For 8 years. Yeah.
very similar. It's a little different, but somewhat similar to the ARCCA argument that the DA is making, in terms of you're never making a good bias argument when somebody craps on your case at a time they had no reason to be biased and they had no clue about the influence that you claim is the source of the bias. So like with ARCCA, you know, they can bitch and moan all they want and talk about $20,000 and Signal and all this stuff. The bottom line is, I didn't know who anyone in the defense was, got hired in 2023. You know, they're not saying it in court, by the FBI, whatever, another agency. And I just gave an opinion. The gloves were off. I was allowed to be contacted by either side. You never did. They did. Hello, Winnie.
Hi, Winnie.
So that's that. But the same thing with Lucky. I mean, the guy, and, you know, the massholes like us will appreciate this. This is not an insult. He is as towny gets.
Yes.
I mean, the next time he steps foot out of Canton will probably be like the 7th time in his life. I don't mean that in a bad way. He is as entrenched in that town, grew up there, never left, went to high school, works for the town, knows the Albert family forever, worked for the I mean, he's just, brother is on the select board because they're townies. That's just, so he has no reason in late January 2022 or early February to sit there and say, you know, oh, I'm not saying anything. And what does he tell them? There's no body there. So then he says, when he's allegedly getting intimidated, it was around the time, you know, he said, my wife passed away.
Oh, I hated that. I hated that, Mr. Bederow.
Well, look, people are different. Okay. And, you can draw your own conclusions about Brennan. Okay. I don't need to share what I think other than to say some lawyers will roll right over it and say, I'm sorry, and just keep plowing ahead, like without missing a beat. Other lawyers might take a step back and say, I'm sorry for your loss, and then take a little pause and go. And, you can draw distinctions between different lawyers and how they do different things. Like, for example, some lawyers, when getting up to cross-examine the mother of a cop who was killed, even if they don't have any questions, might say, I'm sorry for your loss. She acknowledges that respectfully, even though she probably hates him. And then the lawyer sits down and the jury says, that's a nice gesture. No matter what we're going on in this case, it's recognizing, she's in a terrible position.
Of course.
What you saw with Lucky is that he was just, his emotion and feeling at that time was more expendable. Answer the question. I'm sorry, but answer the question.
Yeah.
He can do it any way he wants. And however the jury thinks of him, they'll think of him. I would suggest to you, most lawyers, in particular, most prosecutors especially, would at least take a step, even for like 1.5 seconds, not just plow ahead. But that's up to the jury to decide whether they remember or care about that.
Yeah, that felt so callous to me. That felt so heartless. That felt so, and this was all true emotion of what came out. And when I tell you that Lucky and his testimony profoundly affected me on different levels and in different ways. But when it's been asked and answered of the harassment, you were harassed, you were all of this jazz that you keep going down the rabbit hole with him on. And he says, again, this wasn't a concern, anything that was being said online at that time, because my wife had just passed away. And for Hank Brennan to not acknowledge that natural response, that finally, when he's said, I've answered this, a million different times, I didn't feel I was being targeted. I never felt attacked. And he says, well, if I tell him, in my mind, and this is pure speculation, everyone, I don't know what, Lucky was feeling in the moment, but if I can tell him what was really going on in my life, maybe he'll get it and not ask me another 10 times. He just said my wife had just died.
Again, the guy struck me in 26 years of seeing witnesses as earnest a witness as I've ever seen. And he was that, I think, sincere and presented in that way. Just in general. And even, for example, when Brennan tried to then attack him after ignoring what he was saying about not being intimidated or influenced, that, he implied to the jury that you're giving this testimony, which is clearly favorable to Karen, because you want them to leave you alone. And, and even after this, you got a little attention. And then he introduces this photo of him, and I think it's a photo with Rita. And I think, wasn't there another photo maybe of him and like 3 other supporters, or it's the same one? I don't remember. I had it on in the background that
it was him and Rita. And who is Rita? A Canton resident who he's known for how many years?
Who has run in local politics, has probably known him for 1,000 years, whatever. And the idea that he is suggesting to this jury that after testifying, quote unquote, favorably against the Canton cabal, by the way, because he's afraid that the Karen Reed mob is going to hurt him otherwise, or, make him miserable, that he somehow was embracing this and taking a victory lap, running around, high-fiving people. I have to tell you, it's not the most significant thing in the case, but I will tell you, of everything that Brennan has done that is unseemly or questionable or whatever, that's like top 3 for me. I mean, are you kidding me with suggesting with a straight face? I mean, are you going to get up in summation and you're going to say he's not reliable because he got unduly influenced, which there's no evidence of, and then was somehow relieved and high-fiving and taking photographs with other people, and that shows that he was biased? So, look, he was just one of many witnesses who became a problem for them. I mean, he gave really solid testimony.
So solid.
His demeanor, even when he was getting attacked, was really impressive. And I have to tell you, look at the difference between the witnesses who are quote unquote supporting. I hate that word, supporting, whether they be experts or civilians who are, telling the truth, whether you believe it or not, but are in essence favoring the defense. DeSogra,
Yep.
gentleman, right?
Yes.
Dr. Wolf, with the crap he listened to, gentleman, right?
So much so.
Barros, gentleman.
Yeah.
Lucky,
gentleman.
Now look at the witnesses who, again, quote unquote, favor the other side. Buchanan, arrogant jerk. Welcher, insufferable on cross.
Yeah.
Telling what he thinks are funny jokes on direct, insufferable on cross. Dever, even though she was a defense witness, not really, just embarrassing beyond belief, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Look at the difference. And I even forgot Dr. Russell. Look what she had to put up with.
Yes.
So
strong. Yeah.
So, why is that?
Well, it says a lot. It says, in my opinion, it says a lot. And I think that those are things that the jury does pick up on, how much it is weighted, how much, that it all depends on only those individuals. However, if we see it, we're only human, right? And some people are more in tuned and more empathetic to others than other people. Okay. I.e. Hank Brennan, very, very odd skewing in my opinion. But I wrote this down and I talked about it in my live, but like when Lucky said this, I was just so impressed. He said, I found it encouraging. He was talking about after he'd seen the picture of him and Rita. He said, and instead, because Hank is again pushing this home about you wanted the recognition, you wanted it, and it made it easier for you so that you didn't have to face consequences. So he says, yes, I found it encouraging, but here it is, Mr. Bederow. I did not want it. I did not deserve it. And I was doing my job and I'm telling the truth.
There you go. I mean, that's a perfect answer. It's a perfect putback. And, again, you look at this guy and the defense reaches out to him a couple days later. They learn something. Do the state police reach out to him? No. Only after the blogger reaches out to him, only then do the state police reach out to him, because now we have to try to discredit him because he's going to hurt us, right? Ask yourself, why was there a police report prepared by Michael Proctor in which he said he spoke to the head of DPW or whatever his name is, that Fairview was not plowed that night? Okay. That's probably a Proctor lie more than a plow driver supervisor lie. Okay. Because they kind of know which roads are getting plowed and they have
everything.
They have no reason to skip Fairview because there's going to be a murder there. That's ridiculous. Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, that's another reason why I'm calling Proctor after Lucky, but that's neither here nor there. That's for other people to argue or consider, but that would be really powerful on top of everything else about how the hell it is that you said that road wasn't plowed. Whatever, that's in his report. But, the point is, why are the state police not interviewing any of these witnesses for, months, for years? You have to ask yourself, is there a reason? Incompetence, corruption, a little bit of both?
Yeah. The world may never know.
You're not going to know. This case is going to be over, and you're never going to know what happened.
The other major inference that came out with Lucky again this year. So he didn't see he didn't see a body. And then at the 3:30 pass, it's the Ford Edge. Now, this was also provided to Paul, the defense private investigator, in February of 2022. And I just wanted to say to any of the trolls that continue to say that Karen Reed built this narrative of a conspiracy after the hiring of Alan Jackson, I would like you to absolutely sit and spin on something very pointy, you sons of guns, because this was just another example. And for me, I don't know if I didn't hear it the first time, but when he stated that he gave all this information in February of 22 to the private investigator and was never contacted by Mass State Police until 2024. He had talked to the FBI in May of 23. But like, I'm sorry, is this real life? It's actually devastating because it's so negligent, and whatever it is, whatever actions were taken, and the inaction that wasn't taken by Mass State Police in this case is profound. But Lucky coming up with that information again and saying very precisely, he knows the make and model of the cars. He knows it. Why? Because he knows about the round taillights. Speaking of taillights, he knows all the shits. He tells him at the ice skating rink where he works as he drives the friggin' Zamboni. I can't. So moving forward with that, what was your thoughts on the Ford Edge coming back in to the second trial, and will this be used for reasonable doubt or third-party culprit?
It could be, but I mean, it's, there's a lot of facts to layer on top of each other. Certainly, when you talk about him not seeing a body, it begs the obvious segue to, but he did see something that was very important, and that just happens to be the same make and model that they have. How could it be there? He knew that it wasn't there. It just happened to be right by the flagpole. Now, would that argument be much more effective if they had the butt dials and called all these witnesses? It would.
Yeah.
You still do it. I mean, just look, it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, you factor it in there. But, you say, is this the real world where they don't investigate these things? And it's not the real world in most places, but in Chinatown, it is. That's what happens. They had their case, they wrapped it up in 3 days, and they were done. That's the way it is. That's how it's always been. That's how it's going to be until people who live there make changes.
Yeah. And there's opportunity for that. And I know that, the residents of Canton, Massachusetts will have their voices heard. It's already been known that Lucky's brother has been voted out. So that's just, for Canton Select Board. And there's going to be Michael Morrissey's position he's up for re-election, I believe in 2026. Chat, correct me if I'm wrong. But just, again, incredible work from the defense team in asking the questions of Lucky the way that they did. I really appreciated too, Mr. Bederow, when he said that he didn't say that, right? So when Brennan was bringing up something that he said, you said that there were emergency medical vehicles there at 3:30. He goes, I didn't say that. I didn't say it. Sorry, didn't move an inch. Impressive.
Yeah,
he didn't say it. It was just written incorrectly. Many other witnesses have said things have been written wrong.
The cross-examination of Lucky was flailing. It was, I mean, there might be some inconsistencies on time and when the plow goes by and whatever, but that's not significant in the larger scheme, as long as he's claiming and you believe he's credible that it was well after 12:30 and there was no body there. I mean, that's bottom line takeaway, the one point as to why anybody would call him. And, you know, he was as airtight on that as he said he could be.
Yeah. And I did find, was there one, oh, the dumpster, right? This was where he was like, you would have known there was a dumpster. And I thought to myself, right back to Lucky telling us on the stand himself, what is he looking for? You are looking for pedestrians. You are looking for cars. And the other thing is, God forbid, an animal. You know what I'm not looking for? A dumpster. Because you know what a dumpster is not going to do in the front yard? I don't need to clock it. So it's not, to me, it's not a safety risk. It's not a risk that I am going to need to report to anybody because it's not in the road. I don't know what that flex was.
Well, maybe, you know, on cross-examination, he was having a stream of consciousness, and in his mind, he was saying, my God, this is a dumpster fire. And, oh, look, there's a dumpster. I don't know. But, I mean, you're just writing. It's so absurd. I mean, the reality is, things that have no reason to stick out, you may not remember, like a dumpster in front of somebody's house, or whether a certain tree was there, little things like that. But I'm pretty confident if somebody says, I am literally laser focused as I'm plowing because I don't want to hit things, would remember one way or the other, whether they saw a human body without a coat and one shoe lying there. You might remember that. In fact, I'm pretty sure you would. So to kind of compare that to a dumpster, that was just silly. It was certainly not effective, but you know, again, the cross was flailing. I mean, there really wasn't that much to do that he could do, and the witness was, demeanor-wise, perfect.
Absolutely. Then we move on to Canton sweetheart, Karina Kolakethis. She is just a normal mom. Oh, and she is a pharmacist. She's a woman in STEM. I love her. Okay. What a delight. Just a treat. And she had been friends with Jennifer McCabe for about a decade before because of their children. They, especially her youngest and Jen's youngest and her youngest, were friendly, and they did sports together. She also was very friendly with Officer John O'Keefe. And in about 2020, she had met Karen when they had rekindled their relationship, and she got to see them out at sporting events. So she ended up going to the 6 o'clock game, you know, the game, that we talked about for 3 weeks in trial 1. Thank you, Adam Lally. I know the score. Okay. But
is that the big Foxborough women's basketball game that regrettably was won by Foxborough? That one?
Yup. And so she ends up tucking and rolling. She says, I'm done for the night, right? She goes home. Her husband, Mr. Kolakethis, goes out. He orders a sandwich. He calls her, and then her kids say, oh, go out, Ma. Go see Dad. And she goes, okay, whatever. So she gets there. She meets Jen. She is introduced to Coco and to Brian and to Caitlin Albert. And she's like, I don't really remember anything else, but no one else from the team was there. And after she had finished up, she said, okay, I'm going home. But she was only drinking water. Like, again, she's tired. She's a working mother in STEM. She's got no more juice in the tank. So she's on her way out. She's going to leave. And who walks in but Officer John O'Keefe and Karen Reed? She is like, JK, I'm staying another couple minutes. Boop, boop. Can't wait to talk. So she sees Officer John O'Keefe. He is so excited about his niece getting into Bishop Fian. And also Karen is elated, and they're just talking the shit. Then the girls go and they are talking for about 50 minutes for the hour that they're there. And then what took it from there for you, Mr. Bederow, as it related to her testimony?
So, yeah, no, I thought she added a lot of value. I had a little fun on Twitter because a lot of people were asking, what's the point? So I just said, you know, in case you're wondering, she does add value.
Oh yeah.
Here's what it is. And then, of course, some of the Twitter law school graduates and anonymous lawyers, if they're really lawyers or not, who the hell knows, they get on and say, my God, you're such a moron. And what, you know, you're in the tank for them. You're a hack. And I tried to respond that, you know, there's a lot of nuance in trying a case. And there are sometimes you just want to cover bases here. And sometimes you have, you know, big money witnesses that matter, like for the larger point. And sometimes you just want to fill in the landscape and accomplish some things. And that's what she is. She is an excellent nuanced witness and actually did a lot of things that are helpful. Not that they're like case winners, but for example, Karen's not going to testify. That's not my choice. There's no way. Okay, she's not going to testify. That they'll decide. She'll decide. That's her right. But let's not kid ourselves. She's not going to testify. So one of the key things you want to do is, how do you humanize her? Okay, there's different ways you could do that. One way to do it is to bring in a really, really nice lady from Canton who is also really put together. She's a professional. She's married to another professional. They're responsible, you know, like they've had enough. They're the adults. We're going to go home. I mean, he's kind of mischievous. Come on. And then eats a sandwich. It's like, we're hanging out, whatever. They're likable people. Yes. She's relatable and she's likable. And she's a really unique person in that she says, I'm friends, or at least was, maybe I don't remember what she said about it now. Jen McCabe is my friend. Karen is my friend. This is the night, and John O'Keefe was my friend.
Yeah.
And this is the night that John O'Keefe died. It turns out this witness is one of the last people to see him.
Yes.
Right? And here she is 3 years later, knowing that the McCabe's and all them are pointing at Karen. The DA is pointing at Karen. She's Satan on earth. She's guilty. She's a pariah. And she comes in and says, I'm great friends with Karen today. I mean, I like her. I was happy to see her. I still like her. So that's how you humanize someone. So, you know, anonymous lawyer, if you're real or not, that's a reason why you might call someone like her to begin with. That's just number one. Number two is she, as we said, is the responsible one of this group. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, there's a blizzard coming. I've been out all day. I'm tired. She's not the one who's like, let me go out, go to this bar, go to the game, go to this bar, and then go hang out at the Albert House. There comes a point in life where most responsible people say, I'm done with this crowd, right?
Yeah.
So she is responsible. And most importantly, that night, she's sober. Like, no drink sober. And she happens to be, of all the people there, as the responsible sober one, who spends the most time looking and observing and communicating with Karen. And what does she say? And she's also a pharmacist, so she's aware of whatever. So she is in the best position and the most credible person of the rest of the drunks, if you will, who are doing their own thing, to assess the condition of Karen when the DA is telling everyone she's wasted, she's drunk. And the evidence of that is really based on an extrapolated test, which may or may not be reliable. Yeah, they have video of her having drinks. I get all that. That's not the point. But she says, she looked fine to me. She spoke fine.
I had no concerns.
I had no concerns, which, by the way, supports what the two kids driving said. They had their signal on. They pulled in front of us. She didn't break any laws. Whatever. She looked in control of her faculties and certainly capable of driving. I'm not talking about blood alcohol tests. I'm talking about in the real life of, is she a threat on the road?
Correct.
She was driving appropriately. And according to Karina, right? That's her name?
Yes.
She was. So that's another reason you might call her Mr. Anonymous Lawyer, whoever you are. Okay. Another reason.
Julie Carpenter. I'm just kidding.
No, it's one who actually says, I'm an anonymous lawyer.
Oh, okay.
Another reason you might call somebody like this is one thing that good prosecutors like to do is a lot of times you don't really see it in this trial, okay? And maybe this is just they try cases differently. When I grew up in the Manhattan DA's office, this is how you did it. They had something that you would want to do, something called a double direct. It's a term of art. And a lot of times, the way they would want you to do it and the way you would do it is when you're asking a witness about something, you would kind of ask them, can you just explain what happened? Almost like a narrative.
Yes.
All right. And let them go. And then when they're assuming they like don't veer off course and you can let them now, presumably you prep witnesses before they testify. So they follow the narrative. And then when you're done, you break it down and talk about each topic. You're getting it out there in front of the jury twice. It's effective.
Retention. Yes.
Okay. So that's how we did it. Now, they're not the prosecution and it's not a double direct, but it's a similar point. They already have waterfall video in evidence, which shows Higgins, Brian Albert, and Chris Albert doing, let's be honest, weird things. Mostly Brian Higgins. I mean, Chris Albert is holding him back, but mostly weird things. So you get her to attempt to narrate that, and why she was even able to do that is beyond me, because she probably didn't even see it. So they probably could have objected in the beginning and none of this would have happened. But she was able to navigate to some extent, Higgins gesticulating, pointing, there's John O'Keefe in that direction. So they got it out again. They hit the jury again. Then you go back and say they did something else before that the jury had not seen, and now they're following up on Higgins again. The text messages, the jealousy, the ghosting, whatever. What do you see? You see the affection from John O'Keefe
to Karen,
kissing Karen on the head
in front of Higgins.
She says, before you get to that,
sorry.
He says, I've never seen anything like that. Whatever. That was hard to believe, but okay. I mean, I don't disbelieve it.
I think that she means like a boyfriend to kiss a girlfriend on. I think that she thought that was very sweet, and maybe I don't see many people kiss someone on the forehead in real life.
I'm digressing. It really doesn't matter. So she sees them being affectionate, okay, which is now, yes, Mr. Anonymous Lawyer and Twitter trolls, another point that they're now getting out in front of the jury saying they were affectionate. At least 30 minutes before you allege that there was a killing, they're very lovey-dovey. So now the jury is seeing that. Then they add another layer to that. It's happening right in front of Higgins. Now, you only see the back of his head, but he's looking in that direction. And now you have the gerbil spinning around in the jurors' heads saying, oh, is he looking at that? Is that pissing him off? Well, remember those text messages? Well, that's texting her. And there's jealousy, potentially. Then you have, the fight, if you will, the argument or the something. And then the last thing you get with her is this idea, which may or may not be impressive to the jury, but it's certainly worth putting out there, that at the end of the night, that Jennifer McCabe, according to this witness, told Karen to come with her. Now, is that the biggest deal in the world? No. But if you're thinking about Higgins is looking at the affection, the text messages, he's pointing at the bar, he's waving him outside, he's doing that stuff.
Yeah.
Is it so crazy to add on to that? Why are they trying to separate them? Again, it's not the biggest point in the world. This is a nuanced witness. She's not Barros, she's not ARCCA, but she's checking off a lot of things that, throughout the trial, you want to establish. Okay. So that's why you would call someone like her. That's why it's not a waste of time. That's why, yes, on these kinds of things, I actually do know what I'm talking about, and why you have to recognize in a trial, there are different reasons for different people that you may or may not call. And she did a good job at that and was not even cross-examined because there's nothing to cross-examine her on. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
So that is why intelligent trial lawyers like these people would call her. She served her purpose. It worked. It's not the most important thing in the world, but it did humanize Karen. It did lead to more evidence of what happened in the bar. It was that double direct. It did show that maybe she wasn't as drunk as they're trying to make her appear. It showed all of these.
The sober pharmacist who spoke to her for 50 minutes of the hour. And I had a thought too, Mr. Bederow, was that when Karina is recounting Jennifer McCabe putting her arm over her and saying, "You're coming with me," and her saying, she specifically used the word that it really stuck out to her, and it was like it really stood with her, right? That she remembered that, and she was like, "That's weird" to her, right? And for me as a woman, and I just mean this for the ladies on the jury, when you have one of your girlfriends, right, or that someone you know, that this may be out of the norm, right? Like, what are you doing? And it wasn't that Mr. Yannetti even said to her, like, "Oh, were you wondering why they didn't invite you or something?" And Karina, Mrs. Kolakithis was like, "Absolutely not. I would have never gone. No, thank you." But it was not the plan. You came with Officer John O'Keefe. You're going to leave with him. What are you doing? And where did this come from? And I always thought that Karen had never, and I don't care what anyone says, any idiot that wants to say that Karen was invited by the homeowners. No, she wasn't. Jennifer McCabe gave the invite to, I guess, allegedly the table, right? But if I was not invited by a homeowner to a house, that what am I going to go do? Hang out with your son that I don't know? It's his birthday. The girls he has a couple of his girlfriends over. They're dancing, they're singing. He doesn't want to hang out with your old asses. And I think it's weird. I have always thought that that was weird. And the fact that Jen just thought like, "Oh yeah, like, you're coming with me. I'm taking you this way." It has rubbed me the wrong way since the first trial. And I think that Karina also had that feeling of like, it struck her as odd.
Well, anytime you have a fact that arguably could go in with the weirdness going on with Higgins and anger, again, is it some degree of speculation? Yes.
Of course.
If it somehow fits or is out of place or odd, then it's worth doing. And you have to have the mentality. I mean, this is the way real investigators think, police officers, detectives. If something is out of the norm or doesn't make sense, such as that, they didn't come together. Why is it? She wasn't invited there. Anything that's out of pattern, most detectives will flag and say, it's Columbo style. It really is. Like, why is that? Does it mean anything? It may not.
Yeah.
But if there's one juror who says, "That's weird to me, that feels like something," then that's a net gain for the defense.
Yes. I just said, like, as a girl. And then another thing is that I truly found moving from Mrs. Kolakithis is that she's describing the last time that she's seeing Officer John O'Keefe, right? And that it's Karen and John together, and they're walking towards like a small cafe that used to be there or something. And, they're walking towards the car. And for me, I got a little emotion, I'm feeling the feels. I'm feeling a little verklempt, I'm misty-eyed, and I'm like, that's the last time. And to think that, like, So when you're at a bar, right, or you're having a time with your friends or people you're enjoying company with, like, it seemed like a normal night. Now we can parse out the abnormal things that were occurring while simultaneously others in that same room were thinking, this is a normal evening. Then you can parse out and you are able to isolate seeing the motions that are made by Brian Higgins, the arm grabbing of Brian Higgins by Chris Albert and saying, calm down. Like, clearly, you've got Brian Albert and Chris Albert saying, get out of here, take it outside, and him still motioning. Now, meanwhile, there are innocent bystanders that are going, oh, we all had a great night. I don't know how anything could have gone such awry, but you're seeing things only from our perception, right? Our purview. And to have that opened up by Karina was huge to me, right? Because she is showing you her perception of the evening and then still able to pick out events that could be of interest to the jury if they choose to look at it as that.
Yeah, no, I think I mean, again, I wouldn't classify her as a make or break type witness.
No.
She served a lot of purposes and checked a lot of boxes of things that you want the jury to think about. And she also, she's a low risk call, right? I mean, she didn't even get cross-examined by somebody who cross-examines usually too long. So, and had no questions, which I agree with him. I think that was the right move. You're getting nowhere with her. They love her, and there's nothing to get out. I thought he made the correct move, just from from the prosecution side. Just get her out of there. So yeah, she added value. Not the biggest deal in the world, but certainly worth doing.
Perfect. So, and then now, and I know I'm so sorry. I've just been having such a blast with you, Mr. Bederow. I'm not doing awesome on my time management, but thoughts on day 28, ARCCA and Dr. Wolf. I thought that he came in direct testimony, in my opinion, was not only incredible, but it put things together in my brain that I had not been able to with their testing, with their actual science, with their actual demonstrations, and showing me in real time experiments and what their theories were, how they came to these conclusions, your hypotheses, how you start and do actual real science, not moonlighting as Blue Men Group members at 2 miles per hour. Yet somehow ARCCA has been paid $50K. And we have Aperture tapping in at $325,000. I want an audit. Like, I need to know line by line what in the world you paid that money for, because I am blacked out when I heard the number. Sorry. Now you tell me everything that you thought, Mr. Bederow.
I mean, the difference between ARCCA so far, because to be honest, even the more powerful one is coming.
But Dr. Rentschler.
The difference between ARCCA and Aperture was on full display. Demeanor, okay? Between, again, Welcher, for whatever reason, on cross-examination, just took a tone that was unbecoming of a professional expert, where Dr. Wolf didn't. Obviously, Aperture also has the Burgess problem with his academic and other problems. You have the difference, the stark contrast in pay. An 8-to-1 pay scale is, you do 3% of the work and bill 8 times the amount. It's not a good look. You have this comical lack of science. You have, as you said, an SUV backing up at 2 miles an hour with paint, and I'm gonna, dress up like John O'Keefe, not with the hoodie though, and show you where the paint goes. I don't even know where the impact was. We can't really know what happened, but in my opinion, this is a car strike because of that. And then you have all the other experiments that obviously Wolf did. And then you get to the actual conclusions yesterday.
Yes.
And it's interesting because this case is so splitting of people online. And, there are probably on both sides, you have to eliminate, maybe 5 or 10% of people who are just delusional no matter what.
Yeah.
And of course, 5 to 10% of well, it's probably like really most of them because there's not that many, but putting aside the wackos and haters and the people who, would say someone is innocent if they gave a press conference and, showing them committing a crime. Put all those people aside. Mm-hmm. But even people that are away from the real fringe who analyze this, they're so crystallized. And the problem is this. Some of the people who think Karen did it, that's not the issue. The issue is whether they are proving beyond a reasonable doubt that she's guilty. Right. And this is where the trigger comes in for all these people. They grab a fact that they perceive as favorable and say, she did it. But they never marshal all of the evidence in the context of reasonable doubt and say, how are you eliminating reasonable doubt to support your contention she did it or didn't do it, which is not the issue. The issue is reasonable doubt, yay or nay. That's what a criminal trial is. So some of them that are either lawyers or profess to be lawyers who ignore that, they're just intellectually dishonest lawyers if that's how they analyze. But they take yesterday, okay, and there are some people who they're delusional. They look at yesterday and saw a video, 2 videos, I believe, of there was an impact at which, yes, a taillight, which it turns out, by the way, is acrylic and not polycarbonate after all this time. Whatever.
I was wrong.
Well, yeah. I think everyone was whatever. The point is it's not as tough, but it's tougher than glass, but whatever. There are 2 videos which, yes, do show that, an arm getting hit at a certain speed, I believe 24 and 29 miles an hour.
Correct.
Can, in fact, to some extent, shatter a taillight. And they see this fact, and these people lose all sense of reality and are jumping up and down saying, oh my God, how dumb are these people? They're telling on themselves. They just prove it's possible or it could happen. And you say, all right, time out. Possible and could happen is never good enough for the prosecution.
No.
So beyond that, though, it's like you got to pay attention to the whole thing. Okay?
Yeah.
So you start by saying we're trying to emulate what the actual taillight looks like. Right?
Yeah.
And look at the taillight, some of the quarter panel, the real taillight that was on the SUV.
Yep.
Some of the real taillight is blown out, some of it. And then a large portion of the liftgate light, if I'm saying it right, is just completely blown out. Like it exploded. Right?
Yep.
Okay. And we're told it's like 47 pieces or whatever. Okay. And you also have to remember you have John O'Keefe is like a good 7 to 10 feet in the lawn.
Correct.
Not in the street. And he's wearing a hoodie that has 9 minute puncture holes. And he has an arm underneath him, which has a lot of striations and I guess what you would call lacerations, right? You're the
abrasions. Yep.
Okay, I'll defer to you. But presumably no broken bones, no whatever. Okay, fine.
No.
And then, of course, the other, saving the best for last, I guess, the other, isn't that the name of the song that he did with Deborah? I think it is, the Vanessa Williams song. Anyway, the best and last point for the taillight, according to Dr. Wolf and according to the DA and according to the pictures you've seen, the diffuser is destroyed in Karen's taillight.
Correct.
Okay. And you're told by Dr. Wolf that the main taillight, the red part, is 5 millimeters. The diffuser is underneath, it's 3 millimeters, but you have to get through the 5 through the physics and destroy that to harm the lesser, the 3-inch one. I mean, that's just common sense, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, all right. So then they try to emulate this. And the first thing you see is when there is an impact at 24 miles an hour that does shatter to some extent the taillight.
Yep.
There is much, much less damage in all of these experiments than there is at her taillight. And there's no damage in the same spot. Okay. It's not blown out there. But the real condition of the taillight issue is that in every single test they did, including the 29 miles an hour when they did the straight on in the middle of the road and just plow into poor Randy, or none of those experiments was the diffuser
Justice for Randy. Yeah.
blown out.
Mm-hmm.
None.
Yeah.
So much higher speed. And by the way the physics guy explains it, you can't just say, well, it's only 5 miles an hour faster, so what's the big deal? If you listen to what he said, and I'm not a physics guy, but I heard what he said.
Yeah.
The force and mass and all of that physics crap increases exponentially while you're going. And it becomes much more than just layperson like you and me saying, what's the difference 5 miles an hour? It's actually a lot.
Right. Yes.
So the question becomes, if you're driving this car in at a real high rate of speed, and the diffusers are not damaged, but the SUV at a lower rate of speed, at a side clip, not even a smash on dead one,
right,
the diffuser is destroyed, that would appear to defy the laws of physics on what you need to do it, putting aside the fact that the light is already lit up. So that's a problem.
Yeah.
And then you get to the hoodie.
Oh, so that was huge for me.
So
yeah.
In every single test, other than the one in the middle of the road, which you saved for last, saving the best for last, once again, for
Auntie Deb.
Right. Oh, God, I have that shrill tone now with the Vanessa Williams in my mind, and it's going to bother me all night.
I love it.
Well, it's funny. It's good. It's not as good as the Higgins one, but that's others to decide. The hoodie, other than that one dead-on collision,
right,
was the same, same exact material and everything, had nothing on it, no damage. No. Yet the one from here had 9 tiny little pinprick type holes or teeth, whatever,
yes,
which didn't even match underneath. That's a problem. Again, how do you explain that? And then what Brennan does on cross is what he kind of does. He misleads. They do the 29 mile an hour one, which is in the middle of the road, but the middle of the road is gravelly. It's rocky. It's, there's friction on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And the dummy, Randy, gets trucked. Okay. I mean, he gets hit in the middle and gets trucked and dragged on the street. And not surprisingly, the hoodie is tearing on the ground.
Correct.
Okay. But so then he says, there are holes there, right? And there are, but the holes look nothing like the little pinpricks, right? They're large. And then you come to find out only on redirect, well, wouldn't you know it, the whole hoodie is actually torn up because it's dragging. It's got those mud stains and all that other stuff. It's dirty and it's ripped all over the place because it's getting dragged in the road. And then you get to another kind of interesting point on redirect, which was, really heavy physics stuff, which is if the impact was happening at 24 miles an hour and the point of impact is like half a millisecond, and the arm is moving at 24 miles an hour and the hand is moving at 21. In order for the shards of taillight to create any of those striations or whatever, would have to be moving at a higher rate of speed to cut and move, but it's impossible under the laws of physics. It can't generate that speed or force based on what he's talking about. And he basically said it's impossible.
Yeah.
Now, in summation, they got to put that in English.
Yeah.
Right? That's like, I'm not sure if anybody recognizes that. And then you're going to have Dr. Rentschler, who's going to come in and say,
the injuries.
Well, that's right. And the funny thing is this, you don't even need an expert for that, really. You should do it. But jurors, there are certain things, even though they can't tell you how broken bones and torn ligaments and bruising works, but everyone knows people who get owies, who bruise, who fracture.
Yeah.
One of those things in your everyday life you're familiar with. And there is not a sane person who's going to believe watching those videos that are going to take that taillight at 24 miles an hour and shatter some of those pieces, who's going to think an arm out like that just gets whacked is going to have no injuries, no bruising, no bones, just the abrasions. That makes no sense. So now
you saw a video of it too, Mr. Bederow. This isn't just like us having to use our brains. You're seeing this in real time. You're seeing that mass, that speed, that force. You're seeing, and at the biggest explode or the biggest, combustion of taillight, 19 pieces were found, not 45, 47 pieces of taillight found. And this is at where it was the direct hit to the arm, not a side swipe to the arm. So therefore, ergo, take it somewhere else. I think you're absolutely full of baloney all the way up to your eyeballs, and your Blue Man Group has been terrorized by actual science.
But now it gets worse, because now you get the expert who then says, it's my opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty. By the way, not engineering, scientific, whatever. And he says that it's not consistent with a 24-mile-an-hour crash doing this.
Correct.
The hoodie is not consistent with this. The condition of the taillight. Okay. There's no burden of proof here for the defense. They're poking holes, okay? And they're doing it. And they haven't even gotten to the lack of injuries. And you're right. Okay. They're doing science, not playing with finger paint, dressed up as John O'Keefe. And a point that ought to be made in summation in this is also, why are we, the defense, conducting tests to show you that it's not consistent, it's not likely, rather than the district attorney who paid $400,000 for an accident reconstructionist present these type of tests to show you why it must be? Notice the burden shifting here. The defense is the one enlightening the jury. And what they ought to do in summation is point the finger and say, they ought to be doing this test to show you that they're right beyond a reasonable doubt, not us to show you there's plenty of doubt. And then you argue and you say the reason they're not doing, because they know. And that's why you got finger painting at 2 miles an hour, leaning into a car, cosplaying as John O'Keefe, saying, I don't even know what speed the car was going. I don't know anything about anything other than anything's possible. And, other than that, she's guilty. So when I look at these people online who are like tap dancing and celebrating because they're, oh my God, they proved the taillight can shatter.
We always knew that. Yeah.
It's like, get a grip of yourself, man. Like, you need to recognize all of the problems, and you need to show that there is no reasonable view to the jury that ARCCA could be right. And if a juror says, I don't know, maybe they're right. Not they are. Not that they're proving it. I don't know whether that guy's opinion is right or wrong. It's possible that he's right. Well,
Yeah.
it's possible that there was no car accident.
Oh.
Means it's possible that she didn't do it, which means she's not guilty. So spare me the, oh my, I mean, seeing some lawyer analysis of people saying, that's it, that's it. It's insane to me. And that you have to look at this through the lens of reasonable doubt and burdens of proof. And if nobody's willing to do that, you shouldn't even talk to them because they're just not making sense.
Yes. 100%. It was truly incredible. I was so thankful to get ARCCA and again, you know this, Mr. Bederow, we have just scratched the surface. Dr. Rentschler is going to, Dr. Wolf will be able to wrap up any questions that is needed in recross and, or redirect rather, and then Dr. Rentschler. But I found something was really bothering me. And I want to ask you your opinion. It is regarding the Toyota tech stream data. So we always go back and we harken back to, I'm getting a little bit pissy with Hank and his ability to continue to say, where are you picking this 24.2 miles per hour? Well, shitheads, you told me that. Adam Lally told me that. You told me that. Everyone and their brother has told us since the beginning that it was in reverse at 24.2 miles per hour. Well, I go back and I am watching him try to get him seeing that the Toyota tech stream is a 10-second snapshot, right? It's a snapshot in time. And he says, Dr. Wolf, you don't know, where did you're basing it on the 24.2 miles per hour is when Officer John O'Keefe was struck. Well, but you don't know if it happened in this time frame or if it happened after this time frame. So after the 10-minute snapshot of the trigger event that you're claiming shows that Karen Reed is allegedly guilty of murder in the second degree of Officer John O'Keefe?
Well, he's saying that she was accelerating at impact and it occurred that the triggering event ends, but that the event itself in real terms continues and she barrels into him. And of course, if her speed is increasing, she has to drive through the point of impact. And as you all know, you can't just like stop the car. It has to slow down, probably with the brakes screeching, which probably somebody would have heard. But now you're back to the Jeep. The Jeep.
Yeah, there couldn't have been that Jeep.
Here's another reason, at least consider bringing in Higgins. Now, because you have a disagreement about the Jeep, and if they're lying, they're lying. But you don't even need the Jeep to discredit Welcher. But if we have prosecution witnesses like Jen McCabe, and presumably, I say prosecution, but in this case, defense, if they were to call Higgins, who are going to die on the hill of the Jeep by the mailbox, well, what they're really doing is kneecapping Welcher because she would have smashed into the Jeep. And don't forget, Higgins isn't going to be, he's not going to be wily about the Jeep. He can't be for one reason, because of his stupid story about the little prank in the driveway when, so he's locked into, that's where I put the Jeep. So again, they're not going to do it. It's not the biggest deal in the world. But if you're more concerned about sticking it to Welcher's opinion, to the extent that's the case, you put the Jeep there and his opinion gets even that much worse.
Noted. Also, in the tech stream data, though, I never had noticed this before. And so when I did go back and look at it, when they're saying that they're talking about that, yes, she ends at 74% pedal pressure, right? The accelerator is still at 74%. But it's incorrect of Hank Brennan to surmise that her speed was increasing, because at 24.2 miles per hour, she peaked at 8.5 seconds. At 9.5 26.5 and 10 seconds, she was down to 23.6 miles per hour. And for this, I ask you this. When the trigger event occurred, it is telling us that Karen Reed's Lexus remained at 0% miles per hour. 0%. This is when they're saying that her car was apparently, the tires were spinning out, right? Do you remember Welcher saying, oh, there was the slippage in a 7,000-pound brand spanking new Lexus SUV with with all-wheel drive. Nope, try again.
And no snow on the ground either.
No. Oh, it was wet. It was a little bit. It was wet. Okay, got it. So then, but she starts the reverse maneuver at 41.55. Now, this is getting into the weeds, but it's not. She hits 19% acceleration, and then she's at 36.5, then up to 36.8, and this is all in 1 second. But she's still at 0 miles per hour. Okay. Then she gets all the way up to 63% on the accelerator. She's at 1.9 miles per hour. She then goes to 61.5%. She gets up to 9.9. Here is where I left my body. It is impossible. If they were telling me that her tires were slipping in the beginning of this, right? Then her tires couldn't have been doing, I don't know, going literally Marty McFly back to the future. If you're telling me that in less than half a second, in 10 milliseconds, Mr. Bederow, that Karen Reed's Lexus vehicle went from 12.4 miles per hour to 21.1. Okay. So she gained 8.7 miles per hour in 10 milliseconds.
That sounds impossible to me.
Impossible. It's impossible. So I need to know. This was the thing I need from ARCCA. This is because I didn't get it on Friday, and I know that it's coming. I know it's coming. I know it's hidden because I know Mr. Alessi and David Yannetti, my bowl of spaghetti, would never leave it out. How long they got that SUV? They got it up to the 24 and then 29 miles per hour. They got it in reverse. I need to know, how long did it take? Because if you can't prove it, I want to know what your numbers look like, because this is muffing me up so bad to think that a car, they're telling me that the data said that in 10 milliseconds, no, watch me blink. That's a second. Okay. How are we there? What are they saying? How could this be scientifically possible to get up 8.7 miles per hour in that stretch of time?
I take your point. I don't think you can. I'm transfixed on you. You take notes every day. I saw like day whatever.
I do.
God, is that a thing? Do people do that?
Okay. All right, Mr. Bell.
Oh no, not in a bad way. But isn't that?
Oh
my God, isn't that tiring?
Yes.
Wow. And you sit there the whole time, and you're just like literally.
No, I just write I don't know. I just write what stands out to me, because I'm a note taker. I'm a pen and paper. I'm a weirdo. I'm an old woman. It feels right to me to like jot it down. That's important to me. Let me go back to that. Like, that's just how I retain things. So, and then when I sometimes talk, like if I'll go and do like a little, like I talk in the car sometimes now, and I'll just be able to read from there so that I remember what I'm saying. Okay, that's it. I'm like, it's like I'm going to school, you know. Maybe I could see if you live in one of those states, Mr. Bederow, where I can be a intern consensually, and then I can learn how to do it.
Okay. No, I guess a lot of them take notes. I guess I don't know why that was funny to me. It just was. I don't know. Everybody apparently. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes it easier to remember.
Yeah. Okay. It sticks. I don't know. It sticks with me. And that's how I remember things, like, though, when we get in the weeds, or someone will say like, oh, I don't even know where that came from. And I'm like, oh, let me go check one of my composition notebooks, because I know it's there.
You get bored and doodle when the cross is just going on, and like you just can't take it?
100%. I'm a lefty, so that might make a lot about me too, right? So I am a lefty, and I am the only one in my right mind. That was an old saying. Okay. Alrighty. So, but what a way, in my opinion, to end Friday. What incredible visual aids. I'm so impressed. This is something that I hoped and dreamed to have, like, so that I could try to get to the point where I'm not a physicist, clearly. I barely can work a desktop. This is not anywhere in my specialty. So I need you to break it down like I'm literally a fifth grader. Are you smarter than a fifth grader?
Point of the video is very simple.
Yes.
Video is memorable, it's powerful, and a car backing up and smashing into an arm you're going to remember a lot more than anything else. But there's 5 or 6 key reasons that we talked about as to why there could be reasonable doubt as it relates to whether there was a collision or not. But juries like simple concepts. So when you start getting into, well, the physics of it means this couldn't go in front of that, they'll think about that, but that's hard to conceptualize. Yes. Let me tell you what's very easy to conceptualize. Mm-hmm. These are the reasons why the prosecution is probably screwed. All you need to do is watch the video at 24 miles an hour again and again, and watch that arm just get slammed and bend and whatever. Add the testimony you're going to get for that, and you're going to get people in the jury room who are going to say, I don't believe that there would not be a blunt trauma, whether it be shattered wrist, shattered whatever, ulna, radius, whatever the hell the bones are in there.
Oh, yeah.
Why there wouldn't be bruising, torn ligaments in the wrist, something, broken fingers, if the glass got shattered on my.
Well, nothing. And that doesn't make sense either. When Mr. Brennan came at Dr. Wolf for, why didn't you put a glass in the hand? How dare you do your quote potato cannon when he made a beautiful pressurized? Oh, rude. Anywho, he takes that method. He goes that way, and. But asked, why didn't you put the glass in his hand? Well, babe, FYI, Hank Brennan, if a glass was hit at that speed that did the damage to the dummy, right, Randy and his 9-pound brother, what we would have here is lacerations and deep, probably tendon cut from glass shattering in the hand of Officer John O'Keefe, which was not present.
Yeah, no, I agree. But to me, again, if the goal is to make certain points, dumb them down, and like you said, talk to me like I'm 5 example.
Yeah.
The best evidence of talk to me like I'm 5, why she's not guilty, are videos of of Randy's arm getting absolutely destroyed and then having absolutely no evidence of any real bruising or bone damage. I mean, I just think that is the most basic of all of this, where anybody, I mean, you could have a middle school kid say, watch this video, and what do you think happened to that guy's arm? And they would say, oh my God, he must have broken every bone or had a nasty bruise. Well, suppose I told you he had cuts. Yeah. By the way, through a hoodie.
Patterned.
That doesn't match the holes. And oh, by the way, the hoodie does not have any cuts in this example.
Puncture. Yeah.
If that doesn't give jurors a path to reasonable doubt, along with all the other stuff, I just, then what are we doing here? I guess the real point of this half hour later is, anybody who thinks that a video of showing taillight explode into less pieces than happened at where more pieces exploded at a lesser rate of speed, and the diffusers were destroyed, the hoodie, the lack of broken arms, all of that, why that would lead you to think that the defense just told on itself. I mean, I saw one video today on one of these things where, you know, the lawyer who has about, I'm guessing about 4% of the experience of these three really experienced trial lawyers, was saying there's nobody on the defense team that thought that this was a bad idea. And I'm thinking, these lawyers know what the hell they're doing, and they've established a lot of points that they wanted to establish. And when you have lawyers who are criticizing it that way, they're either not watching, or they're just intellectually disconnected in terms of what they're seeing and don't get it. And it's insane. Okay, that testimony yesterday was effective, and to the extent that Brennan was cross-examining a little bit, at first blush, where you say, well, the arm was lighter, why did he do that, might that create less force, that kind of thing, to a layperson, that makes sense without knowing physics. But then when you listen to the person who understands physics,
yes,
and they have to sum up on this, I mean, they have to drive this home.
Really, yes.
That it's the kinetic energy created and the force of the vehicle. It's going to absorb that little difference because it's going to get pushed at the same speed, and it doesn't matter if it's a marginal difference, and that's within the field that doesn't matter. Then it doesn't matter because the car was going so fast, creating so much force. You know, if you go,
I mean, it was so disingenuous too for Hank Brennan to say that it's 26% lighter when we have an approximation, a statistic of what Officer John O'Keefe's right upper extremity would have weighed based on his height and weight, but nobody weighed Officer John O'Keefe's right extremity.
The point, he was making a big deal on your, you know, using 9.6, and really his arm was this. But then what happens? What comes out? Well, you didn't weigh that either.
Yeah.
So, like, you don't know how much his arm, meaning Brennan, that is. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of.
Well, you would always want to be, anybody knows, right? That knows anyone in STEM, any woman or man in STEM would know that you are going to weigh something, you're going to use something that is close but lighter than you would for something that is more, that weighs more, which the 12-pound arm would have been more than the 11. So then they would have bitched that we used a 12-pound arm instead of, you should have used the lighter because that would have been more conservative as it relates to the impacts. Like, frig off.
Brennan is, you know, look, I mean, he is a defense attorney. He's in this case taken a different role for whatever reason. Who cares? But the bottom line is, he's doing a stereotypical defense cross-examination when you really don't have much, and it's all smoke and mirrors and, you know, not impressive. It's all designed to conflate, confuse, misdirect. And again, when you're the prosecutor and you have the burden of proof and that's what you're trying to do, you're fighting a losing battle. I mean, you need to prove. And every time he does these misdirections, you know, you've seen very good redirects by, you know, Alan in particular, who fixes those things, or you've seen it even in the other direction. And I don't know at the end of the day what he's establishing by the arm weight difference that the expert is telling you with all the degrees in engineering and mathematics and physics.
Yep.
You know, we're dealing with hard sciences here. It's math-based. There are like rules of science in hard sciences. It's like Newton's law, all, you know, force and mass. I don't like any of this stuff, but these are, you know, these are not negotiable things. It's not like a soft science that can be opinion or impression. This is mathematical fact. And he's telling you it doesn't matter that the arm might be a pound less when a 7,000, 6,000, whatever it is, pound truck is coming back at that level of speed. It doesn't matter.
Correct. Facts matter. Science matters. And like we're saying, it is being able to not just correct it. I believe that the jury being able to understand that, because keep it simple, stupid, right? And I don't mean that, like, this is not a stupid case. This is a very important case.
That's a principle.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I just mean that, like, you know, you need to be able to have it make sense on a level that even us, that I don't think I'm you know, a fool by any stretch of the imagination. And it's hard for me to wrap my head around when Welcher was talking, the terrible PowerPoint from Burgess and from Welcher and Burgess, both ew. Okay, it was way too busy. There was nothing said. It was a lot of junk, in my opinion. And now seeing the real artistry and the real representation of scientific principles as presented by ARCCA is in a class of its own. Now, why is it that they are not allowed to say, when we were hired by another law enforcement agency, like the witnesses are, when they are said you were interviewed by another law enforcement agency? I want to change their verbiage. Can we?
Should be able to, but you know, here you're not allowed to. I mean, there's no good answer for this. At this point, the Justice Department as an entity, DOJ, is out there. Obviously, the U.S. Attorney and FBI are, you know, entities of that. Technically, the person who hired ARCCA would be the U.S. Attorney, not the FBI. But it's out there. I mean, it's all out there. And at this point, one could argue that fundamental fairness requires that it be put out there.
Yes.
You know, you heard some of this cross about insurance companies and all of that. It ought to be out there. Certainly, it ought to be a law enforcement agency. Why a question was sustained about, had you ever heard the name Karen Reed at the time you were engaged? That objection being sustained makes no sense whatsoever to me. It's not a leading question. It doesn't suggest the answer. You either have or you haven't.
Right.
Why can't the jury know that they were literally hired without knowing who we were? I mean, but again, you know, my biggest criticism, I mean, some people have others. My biggest criticism of the judge is there's no consistency.
Yes.
There's just, you don't know what you're going to get on any given day, on any given objection. And, you know, what you saw yesterday in all those objections about establishing, you didn't know who the defense was, you didn't know who I was. Those are entirely appropriate questions.
And finally, a last point, Mr. Bederow, what do we think about, or what in the world, when we talk about Hank Brennan and questionable decisions that he's made, his lack of empathy for others, including Lucky, in my opinion, Dr. Marie Russell in belittling people, the way in which he attacks not argumentative witnesses is very concerning to me. And his low blow, or going for Dr. Wolf's wife via a Facebook group, that felt, and I get that, I guess there's no problem with it, but how dare you? I felt, I did clutch my actual pearls and then gave a middle finger to the television. So I need to know why, how is that allowed? Like, what does his wife, and everybody knows, don't pretend like you don't know Judge Cannoni or Hank or Adam Lally, that we all knew that it was, she joined the group or liked the group, whatever it was. I don't know. I don't do Facebook, but she did something with a group that is more in support of Karen than not, after the first trial, or the day after the first trial, the jury deliberations. It had nothing to do with relating to them or having any connection to the work that her husband is doing in a case. And if that is so, if that's good for one team, would there be an ability to go for the gusto for experts on the other side?
So you're allowed to do it.
It's weird.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And the point is, on this record that exists, the facts in this case, doing it, even though legally you can argue it's a form of bias, legally that's okay, but practically speaking, it's just stupid.
Yeah.
Stupid because in this particular case, they were hired before they know who anyone was. They had an opinion before they knew who anyone was. When the trial was over, she joined the group. Now, the argument he's making is by her joining the group, their family, they're free Karen Reed. I hate that whole term, but whatever. They're free Karen Reed, and therefore he's all in with the defense the second time, and he's willing to go farther. You can make that argument. It's just stupid. And I would suggest to you that a lawyer would only make that argument if there's no there. There's nothing real. You start, cross-examining him about signal, same point. Yeah. That's stupid.
Well, okay. If you use WhatsApp or you use any of the apps, right? Yeah.
The fact that, you deleted text messages. Yeah. In the regular course of business, that's what I do. I just deleted them all. And now you're attacking this guy like he's some kind of shill. I mean, look, are you trying to impress the jury sitting in the courtroom? Or are you trying to impress, the Twitter jury and the Twitter law graduates who think that you're just kicking ass with this stuff? In the real world, most jurors are smart enough to know, who are not reading this press and everything. Mm-hmm. This is so freaking stupid. This guy is an engineer who was hired in 2023, had an opinion before he ever met the defense, was available to both sides. And you're suggesting that after the first proceeding, because his wife joined a group, that somehow he is just discredited?
Right.
Again, you can make that argument. It's just comically weak.
Yeah. Well, I just thought, I don't know. And I guess you can, I thank you for explaining why you can do it, because to me, it just feels like, again, low hanging fruit, or to try to assert a correlation between husband and wives Facebook group liking, that equates to that, like you're saying, either the entire family feels that way. Like, that's not only sexist, right? Like, so a wife, she has to do what her husband, he was involved in this case, so she, is falling in line, and she is just supporting everything her husband does at work. She probably knows nothing about any of the work, or if she does, who gives a crap? All I'm saying is that feels very invasive into experts. And I would be like, I don't want people to ask Mr. Nurse Kim, like, are you a fan of, I don't know, Billy Bob Thornton? Did you like the movie? Oh, Mr. Nurse Kim watched Bad Santa 3 years ago. Like, what are we doing? What I don't know. I just find it weird.
Look, again, you can always impeach on bias.
Yeah.
Making a really out there argument about bias. But if you take a step back and look at the whole mosaic here, what lawyers don't do is cross-examine on stupid, irrelevant, trivial things that could also backfire by offending people if you have a real basis to cross. So do you really think that if Brennan had a nuclear bomb to cross-examine Dr. Wolf on, to blow him out of the water and blow his analysis out of the water and destroy the defense, that he'd be wasting everyone's time with this ticky-tack bullshit about your wife in a Facebook group? No.
You're right.
They don't have anything.
Yes.
So that's what he's doing.
So that's it. Like, when you don't, then it's always the smoke and mirrors. And what is it? It's Chinatown, Jake. We know it. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bederow, for 2 hours and 34 minutes of your time.
I'm going to be getting
I gotta go.
Yeah. So before, I last night I was requested to give a couple of shout outs.
Oh, absolutely.
So I have to do now. It's happening again. I have to do a few more. So
Okay.
the OG Auntie Bev, not I don't say Auntie Bev in court. I'm talking about the real Auntie Bev. I had
I
yeah.
know Auntie Bev.
So that, and
Hey,
I'm
Auntie
also
Bev.
that there are some people sitting. It looks like at a bar in Dublin having some Guinness, watching. They know who they are, and they're watching. And so, hello to all of you people. So
Hi, lovies.
I had to get that out.
That's perfect. And I wish you the best Saturday night ever. Thank you so much for spending your time with me and giving me and all of us a just woo-saw for the rest of the weekend. You have a way about you, Mr. Bederow, that allows us all to get it, process it, and prepare for next week. And there is no one who does it better than you. You are my friend. I appreciate you very, very much so. Tell Mrs. Bederow I apologize for keeping you late, and tell Winnie and Lola treat on Auntie Kim next time you're in town.
Really? All right.
Yeah.
Well, scallops for me, treats for the dogs. Okay.
Sounds good. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, lovies. What a night. What a week. We have made it through week 6. Oh, nope, I lied. Oh, who is she? Week 7, Commonwealth v. Karen Reed. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight. And I'm going to do a Sunday service tomorrow, lovies. I will see you then. Have a great night. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite.